I was talking about the fact that for me a very powerful moment was when I was forced to basically shut up and listen because I did not know the language of the country where I found myself. And I, reflecting back on that moment, I feel was the most powerful period of my life when I was forced to kind of, with my words, I also had to give up my concepts, my assumptions. And you listen instead, you try to absorb, you try to pay attention to small details. You do not trust words only, you trust the intentions behind the words. And so I was talking this afternoon in that hall about this churning information into meaning. Well, that process of listening is essential for arriving at that meaning. And so, again, coming to photography, which is your field, I think it captures these wonderful little stepping stones on that journey at its best. There's a lot of ready-made images that do not do that. But at its best, it just allows somebody to unfold a possibility that would otherwise never unfold. Well, maybe that's where my European bias comes through. You know, in Europe, you're kind of it's tough life. My grandfather lived in 3 countries without ever moving, so meaning that political boundaries jump around and hardships are kind of second nature. So one grows up, when you grow up with that kind of a mindset, hardship take on a different perspective. It's not hardship, it's just normal life. And so I don't consider myself having many hardships. In contrast, I think of myself as being very graced to be doing the work I'm doing, which is not easy, but I've never saw it as a series of hardships. So, having said that, I think there is an interesting kind of a tension between more established countries and younger countries like the United States. And to a European perspective, there is a lot of idealism and possibilities here in the United States. But the flip side is also a lot of naivete. You know, if only we agree to something and hold hands, a better world will occur. And to a European, that's a great beginning, but it's only the first step of a long, long journey. And I happen to be somewhere in between. I feel powerful ideas are really necessary first step. But as an artist, I believe that crafting that not only into an artwork, but into myself, and into the life of a community, that's a patient, slow, burning kind of a process that, again, I don't think anything can duplicate it. And so there is an interesting tension between that slow work of art making that exists in a popular culture where we rely on instant messaging, and how do those two realities talk to each other. My answer to that is that I just want to work with people and do something together rather than try to convince them to do something in abstract. I think what makes a difference is people who have journeyed on a similar path before and who give you confidence that something is possible. So I believe that mentoring and apprenticeship are great models for that. And I personally learned from a whole flock of really great individuals who I had a privilege to bump into in my life and absorbed vital lessons for my work from them. I learned more from them in 5 months than I did in university and all my years of school, you know, in 20 years. So I very much value that the modeling that happens with other people and trust them that they've learned something on the journey that can expedite my work. Well, I think it's a really tricky question because, again, if I return to this, that if the culture moves from heresy to heritage, if that is true, then in the first arc of that process, you deal with people who have very chaotic notions of the possible. And on the second arc of that journey, you get more into data and statistics. And sometimes I think what happens with the arts is that we demand measurements from the second arc to define work of the first arc, which is more intuitive, it's more informed by experimentation, and it's more chaotic. I don't think our culture has enough appreciation of that first phase of work. So it's like if we were farmers, we say only things in summertime when we see fruit matter. But how we get to that, that's secondary. So a lot of my work, I just have to trust that the measurement comes from track record of the work. Now we are now getting more serious about validating that, and we do pre and post evaluation, and we've seen some dramatic results in the life of communities where we work. In one of them, the crime rate dropped 40% and stayed there after a project was done. So we know that. But having said that, artistic work, basically, it's really hard to measure. You know, how do you measure a great poem? I think you measure it by inspiring a few people who then start behaving differently, maybe as a result of that 2 years later. And maybe they do something different 5 years later. It's a glacial but real work of transformation. So I find myself that I do not justify my work through ideology. If people are interested in what I have done, I just ask them to see the work and talk with people who participated, and that's the measurement. Now we can be more disciplined about that, and we are getting there because now we are being invited to do this work throughout the country. So we need to get better.